Welcome to Inclusive Voices Media. This is Glendale City Council Candidate Series. Local elections matter because the decisions made at the City Council level directly impact everyday quality of life, from public safety and housing to business development to traffic to parks and, of course, community services. That's why it is so important to stay informed, to get involved, and most importantly, cast your vote. In the interest of keeping our audience informed, we wanted to bring you this very special candidate interview series featuring the people who want to serve on the City Council, on the Glendale City Council. And in the interest of fairness, of course, and equal treatment for all of the candidates, we followed the same protocol for every single interview. All candidates were invited and given the opportunity to select a time slot on the same interview day. Each interview was limited to 10 minutes. All interviews were conducted live to tape. That means we recorded the interviews continuously without stopping, without editing, without retakes, without do-overs. Additionally, every candidate was asked the exact same questions with some follow-ups, and no candidate received questions in advance. Our goal here at Inclusive Voices Media is to provide voters with a fair, transparent, and consistent platform so you can hear directly from the candidates and make an informed decision at the ballot box. Interviews are published one at a time and in alphabetical order. Thank you for watching. Please remember to vote. I'm Silva Harapetian. Welcome to our candidate series. Today with us, Alex Balekian. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We have a 10-minute rule here, so we're going to get right to the questions. The first one is housing. Right up your alley. You've been talking about this for quite some time. Glendale is under increasing pressure from the state of California to build more housing while residents are concerned about traffic, neighborhood character, and of course, infrastructure impact. How would you balance the need for additional housing while preserving the quality of life in Glendale?
So first, let's discuss the kind of housing that the state wants and then the kind of housing that people want, because those two are not the same thing. So the state simply wants to build units for the sake of building units. And you have a lot of lobbyists, you have a lot of special interests from real estate developers who say we would rather build a bunch of penitentiary-style shoeboxes as the number of units and create an entire generation of renters who will then raise the next generation of renters, and Sacramento is more than happy to placate them. Then you have what people here on the ground want. People here on the ground want entry-level homes, a condo that they can move into, something that they can own, something that will be able to be passed down to their children. So you actually have entry-level homes that people can then build equity and then pass on intergenerational wealth. So those two things that people are wanting, more housing, are very different compared to whom you talk to. So there's something called SB 79, which is a law that was passed, which puts a target on our back and says that if you are near a high-quality bus stop, then you must build a certain number of units, and also the local zoning within half a mile of those bus stops is out of the way. So if a real estate developer comes and wants to build a 9-story tower right on Glen Oaks, right where the bus stop is, Glendale can't say anything about it. So we really have to distinguish what the state wants and what the people here want. The people here don't want dense housing. They don't want single-family neighborhoods to be threatened by dense housing. What I would suggest is we have areas like the San Fernando corridor, which goes from the Metrolink station, go 2 miles north up to where Golden Road is, just south of the freeway. That is not a single-family neighborhood. That is a bunch of industrial places. There's a soundstage that may actually not be doing a lot of business now that all the movie studios are leaving. There's a public storage, and public storage just left Glendale to move to Texas. So there are a lot of opportunities, I think, to build condos there, develop entry-level affordable homes for people to purchase as their first home in an area where there is not an existing single-family neighborhood that will be endangered.
Is there anything else you want to add in relation to how do we basically comply with the mandate that the state puts on all of us
Uh-huh.
as a local municipality and give the city and the residents what they want.
Right. So the state calculates the number of units that we must build based on our proximity to these high quality transit stops. So the BRT, the bus rapid transit line, which is coming through Glendale, that puts a target on our back because it has several stops within Glendale that then mandates us to build homes. What we need to do first and foremost is sue LA Metro to get ourselves out of that bus line. I'm not saying don't allow the bus to go through Glendale. I'm simply saying don't allow it to stop in Glendale. So we can actually activate the Glendale B line to shuttle people to the nearest bus stop in Burbank and also in Eagle Rock without putting a target on our backs as far as making any parcel available to override local zoning. So that's one way that you could say, okay, we're going to take the target off our back. The other thing is Glendale is notorious for having this patchwork of codes that even the people in the planning office don't know. And so, some person at one point said, I don't want my neighbor to paint their door red. And so they said, you can't paint your door red. And other people say, I don't want this roof overhang. So there are a bunch of small patchwork laws that have been passed within Glendale City Council that make our building code so convoluted that it's difficult to get something passed through. So what we really need to do is take that entire code, simplify it using AI. Just make it very, very simple, get rid of all the repetitive esoteric stuff because a lot of people are complaining that I don't want to build homes in Glendale because it's such a chore to do so. So we need to listen to the mom and pop contractors and say, okay, what can we do to make life easier for you so you can build quality condos that people can buy?
This takes us to our next question, which is about the budget. And you also touched on potentially suing the Metro, which is going to obviously cost money. And at a time when Glendale is facing significant budget pressure and must make difficult decisions involving reserves, involving hiring freezes and deferred capital projects, what are your top spending priorities? And where would you reduce costs if we were to see decline or revenue further?
Excellent question. So one of the largest expenditures that we have is overtime. You have overtime across all departments: police, fire, planning, city manager's office, city attorney's office. My work is I manage 2 physician groups and I staff a hospital and I make sure that we have the appropriate ratio of doctors to patients. And if anybody's sick, if anybody goes on vacation, it is my responsibility either to find the coverage without triggering overtime pay because that eats into my budget, or worst comes to worst, I have to fill those shifts myself. So all of these overtime expenses that we have, they are inefficient deployment of our existing workforce. So you actually need somebody who's run a business, who has staffed night shift, day shift for a city that runs 24 hours and says, let me look at how you are inefficiently deploying your workers. Let's go through, because that's the lowest hanging fruit, is making sure that the deployment is efficient, that you actually have people who can substitute for one another, and then chipping away at the overtime. And then once you do get rid of that overtime, then you say, okay, these people can be used more efficiently. And then if there's something where we say, okay, city attorney's office, I want you to sue LA Metro to withdraw us from this BRT that we never had a memorandum of understanding for. At the time that we agreed to the BRT, it didn't have the baggage that SB 79 put on it. So there's definitely precedence to be able to take us out of it because, number one, there was not a contract that we agreed to it. Number two, the goalposts have been moved since we agreed to it. So those are some of the maneuvers that I would take to help with the budget.
We've already talked about the next topic, which is the BRT, and I'm gonna ask the question. We can of course come back to any of the other ones you've answered. Glendale is facing congestion, pedestrian safety concerns, pressures to modernize transportation infrastructure. There is the bus rapid transit line we just talked about. What is your approach to improving mobility for drivers, bicyclists, pedestrians, and also considering the local businesses? And I'll have a follow-up once we answer that.
Sure. So let's talk about the truth. Bicyclists. People in Glendale don't bike to work. They bike for leisure. People drive out of necessity. So we need to prioritize necessity over leisure. And I'm not saying just driving to work. I'm saying if you're going to go to the supermarket and lug things home. Okay, my mother, who doesn't know how to ride a bicycle, is not going to ride a bicycle to the supermarket and is not going to be able to carry her groceries home. So we have to be honest with ourselves about what is necessary and what is leisurely. That's number one. Number two, I'm not saying that I'm anti-transit. but we need to make buses and cars work together. And right now with a bus rapid transit lane where you were saying, I'm going to remove a lane of traffic on Glen Oaks in both directions, on Central in both directions, on Broadway from the Galleria to Glendale High School. Can you imagine removing a lane of traffic in both directions? That will not only make life more inefficient for people who want to get to work, it will make life more dangerous for the families living one block up and down from Glen Oaks. So for example, Glenwood Road, which is one block up from Glen Oaks. So just because you remove the traffic lanes, you are not going to relax. People think you replace and relax. Replace the lanes with bus lanes and you relax the traffic. No, it's replace and displace. So if you replace the car lanes with bus lanes, you displace that traffic. One block north and one block south. Suddenly Glenwood Road, where kids are going on their bicycles to school, now becomes the main thoroughfare. So I think the BRT is a terrible idea. We have never signed a memorandum of understanding for it. We need to withdraw Glendale from it. At the very least, remove the dedicated lanes and allow the buses to use the same number of lanes as the cars would.
I'm going to do a quick follow-up to this question. How would you balance those priorities of the different ways people travel through Glendale? How would you, who takes priority? The drivers, the bicyclists, the pedestrians?
So first of all, whether you're a bicyclist, a pedestrian, or a regular driver, we need to crack down on those reckless drivers. Those young men and women, the older men and women who are speeding in their white G-Wagons and their white Beamers and their white Mercedes, okay, we need to crack down aggressively with motorcycle cops and give $1,000 reckless driving tickets. Once you get those reckless drivers to slow the hell down, then you can say, okay, more people are going to ride their bikes, more people are going to walk. I'm going to have more reasonable people driving. Then you say, okay, now that people feel safer, how many more bicyclists, how many more pedestrians do we have? Right now, I don't even think that it's safe to discuss bike lanes when you still have these very reckless drivers who are driving indiscriminately, and they need to be cracked down on.
Thank you so much for stopping in.
Of course.
10 minutes goes by fast.
It does.
I've been saying this to all of the candidates who have been here. I want to give you an opportunity to tell our readers and viewers and listeners where they can find information about your candidacy.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Alex Balekian. My patients call me Dr. Alex, so you can do the same. You can go to my website, votedralex.com, to get to know more about me. But the 3 reasons that I'm running for city council are to crack down on reckless drivers, to lower electricity rates, and to limit dense housing away from single-family neighborhoods and away from small business parking lots.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. I'm Silva Harapetian. See you next time.